Okay. Okay. Yeah, she Sterling Martin Yanishia, Kintla Cheatney Nishla, Toda Cheatney Bushes Chi, Tutney Shache, Tutcheatney Chanella, University of Wisconsin Madison biophysics graduate student, Enish Ta, Dinepizad Bohosha. So be gentle with me and my pronunciations tonight. Um, I would like to say ahehe to Dr. Chi for inviting us out to give our talk about what enable, and you'll learn about that tonight.
Hi, Yate, She Joanna Bandis, Yanishe, Soe Dine Nishle, Belagana Dine Bashishin. Hi, I'm Joanna Bundis, postdoc at UW-Madison. Speaking of being gentle with Danette pronunciation, I really appreciate the invitation to be here. And I'm excited to present the work that I've been doing with Sterling and a whole team of people to add new language to Navajo.
Okay. Yeah, so let's get started. I guess we'll start talking about enable and how we're enriching Navajo as a biology language for education. So first, since Joanna and I are here at UW-Madison, we'd like to acknowledge that UW-Madison occupies Dejope land and inextricably connected to the Ho-Chunk people and their sacred language since time immemorial. We acknowledge the deep Ho-Chunk love for their language and honors all those who speak and care for the indigenous languages of Wisconsin. These other languages include Munsee, Ojibwe, Menominee, Mohican, Potawatomi, and Oneida. And we like to acknowledge that languages are key to the past, present, and future well-being of indigenous nations. Collectively, we share an extingent responsibility to arrest language loss due to settler colonialism, support revitalization efforts, and seek linguistic justice for indigenous peoples.
We also want to thank the Danette people for allowing us to work with their sacred language and acknowledge that language and culture are intertwined.
And I'd like to also use a quote from Perry Charlie, who worked on a project similar to this, the Danette language translations of Tronic-specific terminologies. And this was a quote that we use to guide us along this process as we've been working on Enable. And he said, "The sacred language we were once forbidden to speak is the same sacred language that saved our nation and now restores harmony and balance to the Danette and their lands."
And from this same book or pamphlet, I found this quote very powerful as a non-Navajo person. The Navajo language is held sacred by the Danette. It must be used by non-native specialists to understand and respect the Navajo language. In Danette culture and tradition, the spoken word is powerful and becomes a reality, and therefore all must be mindful and careful of what is spoken. Dominant societal concepts and terminologies cannot be explained well by mere use of literal translations by referring to that society's perspectives. And these ideas really guided the work that Sterling and I have done with this project.
So tonight we'd like to talk to you a little bit about Enable and what some of our goals of it are, what some of the goals of Enable are. One of the short-term goals is to create an easily accessible online Danette English dictionary of biology words. So this dictionary will include a combination of words that already existed in Danette, and then the addition of these modern biology terms that we are creating. And then long-term future use of this, we hope to create educational resources that will allow teachers to use these terms in the classroom to teach the next generation of students in their own language. So a little bit about us before we get too far in. I grew up in Shiprock, New Mexico. I graduated from Shiprock High School in 2008. Afterwards, I went to undergrad at the University of Iowa, where I graduated with a bachelor's in biochemistry. And currently, I'm a graduate student here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, getting my PhD in biophysics. And all along the way, I've always been thinking, like, how do I give back to Danette? So that's where Enable is allowing me to give back to the community that raised me and brought me here.
I grew up near Toronto in Canada. I have a PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology that I got from the University of Toronto in 2017. After University of Toronto, I moved to San Diego for a postdoctoral fellowship at UC San Diego. And in 2019, I moved to Wisconsin and joined the same lab as Sterling, which is how I met him and how I started working on this Navajo language project. I think before we go into details about Project Enable, we really wanted to acknowledge that Team Enable is not just me and Sterling. There are many other people who have been involved. Our main collaborator is Dr. Susanna Wagdemeyer at Davidson College, who's been with us from the very beginning, working on all the words and the grants we've applied for. Mr. Frank Morgan has done all the translations for us and has been really amazing. And it's been incredible for us to be able to work with him. Ira Fick did the web development for the Enable website. Ms. Doris McThomas and Mrs. Delphine McThomas speak Danette and have provided tons of advice and have just been inspiring to us to continue working on this project through the past couple of years. We're really grateful to teachers at Shiprock and Wingate High School who helped us out with coming up with the appropriate biology words in English that should be translated into Danette. And an undergrad student at Davidson College, Bianca Nolde Lopez, who helped with writing and coming up with English sentences. We've been really fortunate to get funding from UW-Madison and from Bowman Performance Consulting. And in general, we've got a ton of advice and support from Monica McCauley, a professor at UW-Madison, and their Indigenous Language Advocacy Group in Wichig. So why did we focus on biology? Sterling and I study biology, so of course we were really excited to create translations into Danette for words that didn't exist. But we think that biology is really important for lots of different reasons that we'll get into.
Okay, so one of the big thing, or a couple of things that biology language is important for. It's important to be able to talk about pandemics like what we're living through right now, and just understanding exactly what is going on, where, how this is happening. That's just important for general education. Another thing is climate change. Biology language is important to help communicate the effects that climate change will have on local ecosystems and farmlands. And an example of that comes from an article that was just released a couple days ago from The Independent on how climate change is threatening Navajo ranchers' way of life. Because of climate change, the Danette is experiencing warming, shown here in this little nice map on the left. And because of that, water is going to become scarce. So just understanding the processes that feed into climate change is important. Another big thing, and I think this is something I've always kind of been thinking about, is understanding the ban on genetic research. So currently, our tribal leaders are discussing this genetic research ban, and having an understanding of biology and being able to talk about it in one's own language is important to understand what exactly they want to do with these samples. An example of how genetics can be powerful is we can use it to identify certain cancer markers. And this is important, as if we can identify those, it's possible to catch it possibly earlier before it develops into something worse and have treatment options for it. But there's also the traditional aspect of it, of like, what is going to happen to my sample? What's going to happen to it? And just understanding the process that it'll go through is important to understand.
Another reason that we thought biology words were really important is because understanding biology helps people make health decisions. This is true for at the individual level with people talking to their doctors to understand their health needs. Having the words available in Danette makes it less likely that things will get lost in translation or have to make up words to help people understand. And biology is also really important to communicate public health messages. A really good example comes from this recent poster explaining strategies to avoid spreading COVID-19.
And then last, but certainly not least, biology is important for creating a self-reliant STEM workforce. So this is important because this will allow the training of the next generation of professors that can go teach at Danette College. It'll help train the next future healthcare workers that'll go work at our local hospitals. And it'll certainly help train the next generation of researchers and scientists to go on and help us become part of like the global scientific community. So we can become our own self-reliant people who don't need to rely on like contracted outsourcing for them to do everything. So then with all that in mind, I would like to tell you about Enable and the many components that are involved in this and Enable, which we'll walk you through. Some of it's complete and some of it we're still working on. But let me tell you, we'll tell you a little bit about how we selected the English words to choose.
So the first thing that we did for this project was to choose the English biology words. We decided to target middle school level words rather than something even more complex. Middle school level is a transition stage of learning where students are switching from more normal everyday words to things that are slightly more technical. And so these words often don't exist outside of English or often need to be created. And because of these words not existing, students often lose interest in science at this age, specifically if they are ESL students. To generate the word list, we used Arizona and New Mexico textbooks and their glossaries to come up with a list of about 1,000 biology words. 100 of the words of these 1,000 already existed in Danette, and so we included them in our dictionary. The next thing we did was took the list of the remaining 900 words and ranked them all as high, medium, or low priority for translation. And we had high school teachers at Shiprock and Wingate high schools provide their rankings. Our goal was to focus on translating bigger concept words and more essential things. And based on our rankings, we ended up with a final list of 250 words that we thought were really key for understanding biology at a middle school level. So to give some examples of high priority words, we picked words like evolution or protein or food chain, which is cut off in this, as opposed to low priority words that were more technical and specialized and aren't really essential for students' understanding of big ideas in biology. So gymnosperm and urea and extensor were the kinds of words that we didn't bother translating in our first batch of 250 words. The next thing we did was create understandable biology definitions and sentences in English. So we wanted to have a consistent level of definitions that would be understandable to a 6th, 7th, 8th grader. We've included a couple of examples. So for abiotic factor, our definition is any living factor that impacts an ecosystem, for example, temperature. And we also decided to include an example sentence. So a rock on the forest floor is an abiotic factor while the trees in the same forest are not. Another example is antibiotic, which we define as a substance that kills or inhibits the growth of bacteria. And an example sentence is, when you're sick because of harmful bacteria, the doctor may give you antibiotics to get rid of the bacteria. We hope that these will be pretty straightforward for students at the middle school level. And of course, these, in addition to the word translation, the definitions and example sentences are also going to be available on our website in Danette.
Okay, so I will talk a little bit about creating the biology words in Danette. So all the science word creations and translations are due to our amazing Danette linguist, Mr. Frank Morgan, which we're very thankful to be working with. So Mr. Morgan has an established history of creating new science words in Danette Bizod. He was a consultant for the cancer terminologies handbooks that were used in the hospitals. He wrote his own book on Navajo terminology for foods and nutrients. And then he was also consulted on another project like this, where he helped create words for the Tronics Danette glossary for chemical sites. So he's a very well-established person that we are so happy to be working with. One of the big things he had to do was create new words for concepts that didn't exist. But as we mentioned before, some words already existed, like a DCN skeleton. So that was picked by the teachers, and we included that in our dictionary. And then tufted as another example for algae. That word already existed. So we included that in our dictionary. So those are just some examples. So just a note on Mr. Morgan's process, and this is a note that about his process that he used for the Danette language translations of Tronic specific terminologies that we were referring to. So in his own words, working with words and concepts involving two languages necessitates clear understanding of the details of a concept to the point of seeing with the mind's eye what the language describes. Hence, it helps to see a visual and hear language that unpacks highly formalized words. Also, the semantic feels of a word helps to focus on the specific aspect to be communicated. Science terminology is a straightforward expression of the nature and powers of the natural world. So that's how he went about creating some of these words that we'll be sharing with you today. So yes, so for the next couple of slides, I'll share with you a couple of the words that Frank created. So yeah, let's start with that. So this first word, cell, actually comes from the glossary for basic terminology in the Navajo language that we talked about earlier, which he was a consulted on. So one of the things we tried to do was build off of words that already existed rather than remake a bunch of different words and have hundreds of words that people created. So we try to keep it consistent. So the Danette word for this would be Atsis bitol. So the Atsis refers to your body, and the bitol refers to the DNA inside the cell. I'm sorry for that typo. And as I mentioned, this came from the cancer terminology book. So an example of how we would like to have built off of this is cell membrane. So the English definition is a network of lipids and proteins that forms the boundary between the inside of a cell and the environment that surrounds it. This is also called a plasma membrane. So the Danette term for this would be Atsis bitol beke. So once again, we have the word for cell that we're using, the Atsis bitol, but then Frank used our definition to, and when he thought about it in his mind's eye, thought about it as a cover. So that's where the comes from. So then when you do the English translation, it comes out to the cover of the cell. So here in this little diagram, you're looking at the entire Atsis bitol, but then you can see the plasma membrane here, or the cell membrane here. So you can see the Atsis bitol beke. So that's one example. Another example that we kind of brought up is antibiotic. So the definition for this would be a substance that kills or inhibits the growth of bacteria. So the Danette term for that would be Joshto yitini be natsede. So Joshto yitini referring to the bacteria / bug, and then the nastide referring to kill. So the English translation is about like bug killer / bug spray. So some images here. So what we might be used to in a hospital setting is the antibiotics that they give you over the counter, or that they prescribe to you, not over the counter. But in a scientific setting and what is going on, what you're looking at here is a plate that is growing osteoyatini. So that's what this white fuzz here is. This orange arrow is pointing to the osteoyatini penatsate. So this is actually the antibiotic that's killing the surrounding bacteria. So that's what it looks like. That's what it's doing. It's killing or inhibiting the growth of the osteoyatini. Another word that Frank came up with was DNA, the definition being a long molecule that contains our unique genetic information. It holds the instructions for making all of the proteins in our body. The Danette term being ina bitol, so the ina referring to life, and then the bitol referencing the string, or like meaning string or rope. So the English translation translating to like strands of life. So here in the picture on the right, the big orange thing in the middle is the osteoyatini, so the bacteria, and spilling out of it is the ina bitol. So you can see the strands of the DNA spilling out, and then here on the left was just a closer up of what that looks like. So you can see the double helix containing all the genetic information that would help this osteoyatini live. Another word would be chromosome. So this definition is a structure made up of DNA tightly coiled many times around proteins. The Danette term, building off of some of the words we talked about, that ina bitol, referring to DNA, but then the referring to how the strands of life are like laying on top of each other. So the English term roughly translating to DNA packets. So here on the left, if we start at the very top, you can see the ina bitol, and then as it gets organized, it gets wrapped around the proteins and then starts layering on top of each other. So that's where the comes into play. And then that gets wrapped around and forms the chromosomes that we're traditionally used to seeing, but unfortunately is cut off. So that, once again, just building off of the words that he creates to make bigger and bigger words. Here's another one, chloroplast. This one, the definition being a cell organelle that produces energy through photosynthesis. His Danette term that he came up with is nunset bezil ishene. So the nunset referring to like growing things. And I know I'm butchering this word, but the bezil strength, and then the ishene making it. So the term being the growing things where the strength is made. So on the left here is a leaf. If we were to zoom in on that leaf, we would see a plant cell, and inside those plant cells, you would see the nunset bezil ishene. So that's what this green blow up is what you would be seeing. So that's the chloroplast, which produces energy by absorbing the sunlight to make bioenergy. And then to zoom in a little bit off of that and building off the word of chloroplast is chlorophyll. So this would be any green molecule that converts light energy into chemical energy during photosynthesis. So the Danette term here being nunset bitol dohlije. So once again, nunset referring to the growing thing, the bitol like being like juice or stew, and then the dohlije referring to the green color. So the English translation being the green juice of the growing thing. So when if we once again look at the leaf and go into the plant cell and then look at the chloroplast, the Nunsit Bazil Isline. Inside of that, you would see that's where the Nunset Beto Dohlije is located. So just once again, using these words to build off of each other and always referencing back to how they build upon one another. And then the last example would be ATP. And this we chose as an example, and this is something that Frank always has in mind, is do you want to do direct translation? So ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate, which is a molecule. And a lot of science words are made up of like Latin and Greek or Egyptian roots. So one of the things is, do we really want to go in and just remake those words into Navajo words, or do we actually want to create a word for it to help people visualize what it means? So this on the bottom right would be an ATP molecule. So the A stands for adenosine, and then you have the 3 phosphates here. But what it's used for is it's the principal molecule for storing and transferring energy in cells. So the Danette term that Frank came up with off of the definition is At'is Bid'ol Bizil. So once again, At'is Bid'ol referring to cell, and then the Bizil being strength. So basically meaning the cell's strength. Like this is what it's using to do work and be used for energy. So yeah, so those are a few of the words we chose to highlight and share with you. So now we can talk a little bit about the challenges that were involved in this. So some of the challenges and some of the things we always kept in mind when we were making these definitions and sentences was Danette is a spoken language that's passed down orally. So not everybody reads or writes the language. So that's something we had to keep in mind. Some of the biology words are considered inappropriate for the website or to talk about. So like sex and sperm. We were very careful of using sacred or taboo words. So like we were sure not to include things like coyote or owl. Some existing Danette words can have multiple meanings, like azet, the word for medicine. Depending how you use it, can be used to describe antibiotic that we talked about earlier. But we went in remembering that like we tried to be specific about how you use things. That way there's no confusion when talking about some of these words. There are some English words that are difficult to translate or have multiple meanings. Like there's an important biology concept called negative feedback. But there's also a Navajo word for negative feedback that doesn't mean that. It means like, getting negative feedback. And then we are typing a lot of these and we're using the Navajo characters for it. So we had to be very careful of the Navajo font versus the Navajo keyboard because that creates some compatibility issues that we didn't want to run into. So yeah, so we'll expand upon the Navajo font keyboard issue.
Yeah, so I suspect that many people in the audience are familiar with this issue. If you are viewing a script written in the Navajo font on a computer without the font installed, it looks the way this paragraph on the bottom looks. You end up with weird numbers and symbols, and it doesn't make any sense. This can create lots of issues for government websites that attempt to write using the Navajo font, which become unreadable to users who don't have the font downloaded. However, using the Navajo keyboard, you don't need the font installed. Our web designer figured out all the details to get around this and has actually built a translate tool that will be included on our website. So if anyone has trouble and ends up with their Navajo font looking all messed up, you'll be able to just copy and paste the messed up text into a box on our website and get the proper Navajo written language out to look at and copy and paste anywhere else. Okay, so the final thing we'll talk about today is the actual website that we designed to be the dictionary. For us, accessibility was crucial. As you probably know, the Navajo Nation has limited internet, and so our website is designed to be extremely light, so it doesn't take tons of data to load. is actually small enough to store in the cache of most phones. So once you visited the website once, all the information will just be stored on the phone. It's also designed to be accessible on really old computers and old web browsers, basically as old as our web developer could go back and do it. We know that lots of people have their major computer access through schools or Danette College or work computers, which can sometimes have heavy firewalls. And so a random website somewhere on the internet might not be accessible. So we're going to have our Enable website that's registered with Davidson College, which is a university. And so most people are able to access university websites very easily. And so we think that the Enable website will be okay to access. Finally, there are other published pamphlets with Danette English translations, but these can be really difficult to find. Lots of the public health pamphlets that we looked for, we couldn't find online anywhere. So we've tried to make our website extremely easy to Google. Our web developer used all the tricks to make it come up when you Google like Navajo or biology. And yeah, I think that basically covers the sort of backbone of the things that we thought about when we were building the website.
Okay, so I can spend the next couple of slides walking us through the website. It's not ready to go yet. We're still waiting on some words and things to come through. So I'll just show you some screenshots of the website. So one of the big things is the website can switch between Danette and English. So when you first load it, you'll see what you're seeing on the left. You'll see the image you're seeing on the left, which has it preset as Danette to English dictionary. But if you just click the little go between icons, you can have it switch to be English to Danette. So you can look for the English word you want if you don't know the Danette word you're looking for. So there's that flexibility. Next slide. So as Joanna mentioned before, each term can be expanded on to show details. So this really helps with the loading. So instead of like loading all the words with all the definitions, with all the sentences, each of the words will be held within one of these, I don't know what to call it, bars. And if you want to look at the details of that word, you would just click the plus sign here on the right and it'll expand. So for example, bacteria, we have the literal translation. So you can see, you'll be able to see what each individual word means in case you want to figure out what the breakdown is, or you're trying to describe the word you're trying to say to somebody. We have the Danette definition here in the bottom, so you can see what that is. And then here on the right would be the definition, so microscopic single-celled organism. That English definition is translated to make the Danette definition. And then here on the bottom right is the example sentences to show that even if your hands look clean, it is important that you wash them because harmful bacteria need to be removed with soap and water to help you understand how this would be used in a sentence. Some of the initial feedback we got would be having an audio pronunciation in there. So once again, if you don't know how to say "Oshto Yedeni" and want to hear somebody say it, you would click on the audio and it will have a Navajo speaker say it. And then the same when talking to some people, some of the science words are a little complex. So some people might not know how to say it. So you would just click on this audio here and it would say bacteria. So you can see how the English pronunciation is made. And then one of the last things, there's a built-in search bar to help make finding words a lot easier. So this would work if you want to find algae, you would just type in algae into the search bar and it would pop up. Or the cool thing is you could type in the Navajo word you're looking for and it would pop that up too. And one of the nice things about the search bar is we'll be able to monitor misspellings, and then that will possibly help Danette educators be like, okay, these are some common misspellings of the word, or like, oh, maybe why is this word misspelled more than the other, to help with some of the linguistics of it, to help teach Danette in the future. So then that kind of sums up everything we've talked about tonight. Right now, the status of Enable, we built the website. We talked about how we selected the English biology words. We talked a little bit about the example sentences, so those are complete. And then we finished generating the English definitions. So that's where we are now.
And the things we have to do next. We're still working on creating the Danette words and translations, and we're hoping to get that done soon. Another feedback that we got about the website is that illustrations of some of the words would be helpful. And so we received a grant to get that done. And we're hoping that we'll be able to get that done this summer. And finally, a thing that we want to do to go along with this is to design educational resources that teachers can use in the classroom to help actually get these words being used by students. And so one thing we're extremely interested in are any ideas or feedback about what kind of resources would be the most useful for teachers to have. So if anyone here has ideas, we're more than happy to hear them.
Yeah, and then we just would like to wrap up with another quote from the Tronic specific terminology. And this one's by Martha Austin Garrison, who was also involved in the cancer terminology page, or cancer terminology glossary. And I'm going to try my best to say this in Navajo. Yine dilyin idil nigo dinepizad nehizede distago. So then the English part would be, and this is something that really resonated with us, is Danette uses the language in a holy, sacred way. Our elders say, as sounds of our language come out of our mouths, we can destroy life. Use the newly developed translations carefully as you talk about the earth and the land we live on. And that's true, especially for this project. We're creating new words and hoping to help enrich the Navajo language for this modern biology era. So use the words carefully as you talk about the earth and land that we live on, because that's what these words were created for. So I want to say thank you.
Thank you. We're happy to answer questions. I see some in the chat that I'll read out after. And in the future, we'll be selling stickers and magnets to help support this work. So we'll make sure Lilvatha gets the link to those, and in the future, the link to the complete website.
Yeah, so that wraps up our small presentation tonight. We're happy to field any questions, comments, feedbacks. So yeah, thank you so much again. I'm going to go back to my screen now, so we'll am I back on?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I can read some questions out for you. I'm not sure if we have the answers to all of them. The first question was, how do we go about making these words the standard?
That is actually a very good question, and something we've thought about. I guess just like how Idinata became the word for airplane, or Beshlachit and Sinskants became the word for computer, just use them. And that's what we're hoping to do with some of the putting them out into the school's curriculum, is just getting people to use them over and over, that they just become commonplace. I know some language groups have committees that are like, yes, this is the word for this, and this is what we're going to use. That's something that could be investigated in the future, to say like, yes, this is that word.
Okay, as I said, the next question is about making the links available to the participants. We definitely will as soon as we have them ready to go. The website will, and the next question is, will the website be available to the public? The plan is for it to just be accessible on Google for anyone. The next question is our work protected by copyright? The answer is no, and I don't know. We never even thought about that. I don't know if there's a reason it should be. Sterling, if you have any.
I know copyrights can get tricky, so I mean, if it would impede the spreading of the words and everything, I'm a little worried about that. But once again, I don't know anything about copywriting, so that's something we could discuss.
One question is whether it could be an app.
Yeah, totally. I don't know anything about that process, but yeah.
Yeah, we thought a website was simpler to start because it doesn't have to be in multiple stores and anyone can access it. And in fact, the website looks a lot like an app when you use it on your phone. But it's definitely something we would think of for the future. Okay, here's a question about one of the words specifically, Sterling. I think it's interesting that the chloroplast had a translation source of strength or something similar. Was there ever a debate as to whether that would describe a chloroplast or a mitochondria?
Yes, so looking back on our word list, we do have mitochondria in here. So it once again is we would, I guess, just compare the definitions to each other. And I think that's where the example sentences would come into play to help differentiate the two. But yes, mitochondria is in here.
But we don't have a definition for it yet.
Yeah.
Or sorry, a translation.
Yeah, so Frank has done an amazing job right now. We're just going back through and validating and making sure some of these make sense. So, yeah.
Sterling, do you plan on returning to the Navajo Nation to work?
I would love to. I'm not there yet at the stage of my career. I'm still a student, and I still need some scientific training, but I do plan on it. I do some work with Danette College at Saley right now to help give back and just share my knowledge with everybody. But yes, I'm always thinking, how can I give back to Danette? And this is one of the many ways I hope to contribute.
The next question is more of a comment, but you might want to comment on this. It's just saying that the Navajo contact tracers are finding it really difficult to translate COVID-19 related words.
Oh yeah, totally. I give them props for figuring out ways to communicate the language to people who need to understand it. So
the next question is the true goal really translating every single word? Because this seems like a big task.
can I optimistically say yes? I don't know, it'd be cool to like write a Navajo textbook, and this is a start to that, a science textbook. But once, I think something that Joanna talked about was we had to find the big concept words first to like help start teaching this before we get into the nitty-gritty words.
Oh, hey, April. She says, I think the choice for direct translation in making the words is cool and smart. Thank you. And might give Danette speakers a different intuition into biology. I definitely agree. And one concept that a colleague of ours has talked about are sort of different ways of knowing. And I think it's really valuable to the entire world to have people who think about big and important concepts in a different way because they think about the language in a different way. Do you want to comment on that, Sterling?
I will say, as a scientist, I really love the direct translations that Frank comes up with, like DNA packets for chromosome. Like that makes so much sense. Why didn't we go with that? But you know, there's histories of like how that was discovered, and that's why that word is the way it is. But yes, I really do like it. Some of his direct translations have made some concepts a lot more easy for me to understand.
This is an interesting question, and I mispronounced one of the words. In the Navajo Times, there was a recent article talking about how the Navajo word selected could upset Hozo on Earth. It's great that you had such wise mentors working on this project with you all. Not a question, but could you speak to that issue?
I think it's important to consult the community and the elders and our Hatatlis about some of these things, especially when talking about things on another planet. So, I mean, this has been a very important aspect, is it's not just us coming up and saying, these are the words you need. That's why we had the teachers go through and say, like, you know, these are some of the words we would like some help with. And then going through the translations that Mr. Morgan gave with Ms. McThomas and Mrs. McThomas, and just being like, are these appropriate? So yeah, it's not just us coming in and making translations, it's us working together with the community to make sure it's appropriate.
There's one comment that this will create the missing bridge between Navajo culture and science, where we miss the opportunity to understand the real concept, which is great. And I actually think even some of these words are just way better than the English word. Like, I think they will help non-Navajo speakers understand biology better. Like DNA packets, for example, is way better than chromosome.
And I think this also goes back to when you think about, like, if you don't ever see a chromosome, but somebody's like, this is what a chromosome looks like, it's like, well, what is that? What does that look like? What does that mean? But if you talk about, like, it's just the organization of, like, the DNA, then that makes a little bit more sense and makes it a lot more accessible to be like, yes, I do belong here. I understand what this means.
Those are all the questions in the chat. I'm not sure if anyone has any questions. Any other questions? Oh, okay, so there's one more. I sort of related to the other question. Is the goal to translate everything to Navajo, or more a concept of how perceptional Navajo can be with nature and science? I don't know if we've thought that far ahead, actually, like about actually translating every single word into Navajo. What do you think, Sterling? Yeah, I don't know if we have a really good answer to that.
Yeah, that's brain for thought that we'll bring up at our next Enable meeting and discuss.
Yeah, that's sort of a broad philosophical question for sort of the Navajo language more broadly than just biology. Okay, so the one question is, what are our next steps and the priority for the project timeline?
Upload all the words to the website once we get them checked and gone through and okayed. And then it'd be releasing the website to everybody so people can look at it and give feedback and comments, because I'm sure we overlooked a lot of things, or we're not thinking of things in the correct manner. And then from there, it would be making these educational resources to help disseminate these words out there. Some of the things we thought about doing were like crossword puzzles with the Danette odd words. Or one of the big things we've been pushing around is like coloring, like doing a coloring book and just have it all be like with the Danette words. I think that's my favorite idea so far. So if anybody has any ideas on some of the things we could do to make educational materials, let us know.
One thing that we've thought of is that since these are new words, we're teaching parents at the same time that we're teaching the kids the language. And so trying to make resources that make sense for parents to do along with their kids, so they're learning the words at the same time. The next question is, how many words are actually translated?
So I can tell you that all the definitions are completely translated, and I'm looking right now, out of the 250, it looks like a third of them are finished. So we're in the very end of things.
And
so about, yeah.
sorry,
go ahead.
the next question is, when will this be complete? And we're hoping for all of the words on the website sort of by the end of this summer, and the educational resources by the end of 2021. That's our.
Yeah, I second that.
People like the idea of a coloring book here, and so, and also a quiz competition on words from science in Navajo.
Yeah, that would help, I think, lend some credibility to, like, yes, the educators are using these, and like our kids are using these. Yeah, so I think this goes back to just helping reinforce, like, use these words. Or like, this is the word for cells, use that one.
Yeah, I think those are all the questions. So thanks again for Jamel Vatha for inviting us to present, and for your attention and comments.
Yes, thank you for your presentation, you guys. Definitely interesting. So if there aren't any more questions, we can conclude. And I think that's the end. Thank you for your presentation. We're from the University of New Mexico Navajo Language Program, and we like to bring some different, this is a little bit different, a lot about terminology, coining terminology for the area of biology. So Sterling, Joanna, and Mr. Morgan are doing some wonderful work. So hopefully this is teachers that are out there. This is something that you all can start incorporating into your classrooms. So yeah, thank you for attending.
Go on it.
Sterling and Joanna, can you share your information? I kind of got on a bit late, so said I need to maybe contact you guys. I work with junior high students, and sometimes science teachers are always asking me, is there a term for Navajo in this? And most of the time, just like what you showed, I do a lot of, I describe the word and then put them together. So I tell them that it's a descriptive word, so it might have maybe 5 or 6 words together.
Yeah.
I tell them that, and they're like, oh, okay. But I tell them that it's just, I'm trying to put all the definitions into a few simple terms. So I would really like to maybe someday have a maybe a conversation with both of you or one of you.
Oh
yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Dr. Chi, you said that this is going to be posted on your website, or on the UNM website?
Yes, we're going to post it on the UNM, our YouTube page. So don't forget to subscribe to our UNM Navajo Language YouTube page. Okay. And maybe if you guys share your email address here.
Yeah, I'll just put them in the chat right now.
Yeah, and feel free, are you okay with this, Joanna, if it gets like put on the website too, like when it gets shared?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so feel free to share our emails on the website on when you post it, so people can contact us.
Great. So yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like both Joanna and Sterling are available for consultations, to have a conversation about scientific terminology for Navajo. So Mr. James, I hope you get in contact with them.
Yeah, yes, we're free and happy to talk to everybody.
Yeah, Joanna, I just shared with you my email.